Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about John Wick Chapter 4. I am a little late getting this review up. I wasn't able to go watch John Wick as early as I thought I was going to, but I have to say I am very glad that I did go see this one. I've seen all 4 of these movies now, and I will say in order of appearance, the ones that I like the most would be John Wick number 1, John Wick number 4, and then the other 2 kind of could be thrown in there at any level. I was very impressed with this kind of being the final chapter for Keanu Reeves in the John Wick series. I knew that he wanted to wrap this one up. Like, it's just an incredibly strenuous action film, obviously, for him, and he is getting older. He probably wants to do some films that are a little less crazy, and this one really went hard for the final chapter. I don't think, other than like the very beginning of this film, maybe the first 30 or so minutes, the rest of it is just non-stop action. Those first 30 minutes is the only time that it's a little bit slow, but even then it's like, it's not slow boring, it's just obviously setting up what's going to happen with the movie. I do have some sneaky suspicions that they are going to do quite a few more spin-off series or more continuations of the John Wick franchise. I think later this year, I want to say that there is a spin-off of the John Wick sort of realm, that universe, called Ballerina, which they are going to do, but there are a couple of things in chapter 4 that just lead me to believe that they are going to do some more spin-off series that are similar to that. They introduced a new character in this, someone called Mr. Nobody, and he basically just walks around with this Belgian Malinois. And no offense to the actor, no shade whatsoever. I think it was fine. But to me in the movie, I thought that the only reason why he was there was as a setup to potentially do a spinoff, because he served zero purpose in this particular film. I think if anything, it's one of two things. They're either setting him up to continue the franchise, and or they wrote themselves into some corners that they couldn't get out of in the script. And so they introduced his character to kind of get Keanu Reeves out of some sticky situations that he otherwise would have died in. But I think because they have such an enormous cast in chapter 4, that there really was no reason for that other than potentially spinning off the series with this new character. That was the only person, Mr. Nobody, I think, in the entire film that I was like, meh, you could have been chopped out. Every scene with him could have been chopped out. I don't think he served any purpose whatsoever. Everyone else, though, was absolutely incredible. I will say probably one of my favorite characters, Keanu Reeves aside, because obviously John Wick is John Wick, but as opposed to like everyone else, I think one of my favorites, and I apologize immensely if I get her name wrong, but Rina Sawayama, I believe is how her name is pronounced. She plays this character Akira, which is basically the daughter of a friend of John Wick. She is a freaking badass in this. I was so blown away by her performance, and they didn't make her like a Mary Sue in this film. And for anyone that doesn't kind of know that terminology, they didn't make her like a badass woman that can't be beat by no man. Like, she is a badass, but anytime she's in a situation where, you know, she might struggle a little bit with a fight partner, let's say, who might be bigger than her. Obviously, the majority of them are men. They make it incredibly believable how she gets out of these situations. And for John Wick, of course, like, nothing is incredibly believable. But, you know, for her character, I think they made her very much a believable badass, if that makes sense. And I very much enjoyed her. I think she had mentioned that this was like her first major film role. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what else she does in the future, because I think she has an incredibly long career ahead of her. I know she already has a career, singing and doing modeling, and I believe she's maybe been in some television series as well, but I think this is her first like big Hollywood film, and I absolutely think that she will definitely, like, we'll be seeing more of her. I have no doubt. She was incredible. I loved her. I thought she was great. But overall, like, I think that John Wick 4 was fantastic. I think that there were a couple of sequences that were so unbelievable in the realm of John Wick, which John Wick is already over the top. It's already, kind of skirting that line between reality and not, but there were a couple of sequences in this that I was like, that's just that's ridiculous. Not that it wasn't fun to watch, because I think that that's the whole point of John Wick, is that you're there to watch and it's incredibly enjoyable as an action film. But there were some parts that I was like, that I don't get that. Like, I know that there was like this roundabout sequence in the movie where there are bad guys sort of chasing John Wick to try and, kill him. Duh. And then there are some like just random pedestrians, right, that are driving in this roundabout, and random people would just hit someone and then keep driving, drive off. And I'm like, no random person is going to hit someone in the street and just act like that's a normal Tuesday, And there was another sequence that was very similar to that, where they're like fighting in sort of this nightclub, and really the only time that any patrons of this nightclub stopped dancing obnoxiously was like when the script sort of called for it. But they didn't seem bothered by like the shooting or the fighting at any other point. And I was like, well, they could have written that a little bit better. That's a little bit ridiculous. And I did notice a few times through the movie, and I am not expecting anyone to notice things like this. I just am ridiculous in like what my mind tends to focus on. But I did notice a couple of times when there would be like a car crash or something that you could actually tell there was no one driving the car. Like, they didn't even pretend to put someone in the driver's seat of the car. It was just like empty. So you knew that was a car that was probably on some sort of trolley system, and they maybe missed that in post-production. And I noticed that at least twice in the film, which I found kind of humorous, honestly, in the whole of the film. But I think probably this one definitely for me borders on being potentially the best John Wick. I do think that the first one obviously is just amazing. It kind of reminds me of like The Matrix, where the first one was just so mind-blowing in that it was so different from what we had seen before that it kind of keeps that number one spot. And I think that John Wick, for me, is sort of similar in that the first one is obviously just gonna be the best one, but number 4 definitely, I think, rivals it. I think they did a lot of really cool sequences, a lot of really cool stuff. There is this whole, I think it's been talked about quite a lot on the internet already, the dragon's breath sort of sequence that they did, which I think has to be one of my absolute favorite sort of fight sequences in a film. And I don't want to give away like spoilers or anything of that nature, but I liked the cinematography of it because I haven't seen in films too often, and especially not like action films like this, where they've filmed it from above. Like they're inside a building, but they film it from above. So it's almost like there is no roof, and you go from room to room and you kind of see it kind of as though you're looking down on a chessboard-ish type of a view. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought it was freaking cool and really amazing to see. And I was really like sort of surprised that they had filmed it that way, but really grateful that they did, because I thought it was just great fun to sort of see it. And that's not a typical angle that you see in films. And I very much enjoyed the way that they did that. I'm not sure with kind of what was going on in that sequence, if they could have filmed it another way and had it be as explosive, if that's the right word, like as cool to watch as they did that way. So props to the cinematographer and whoever it was that was lining up shots and figuring out how they were going to shoot stuff. Well done. So I'm sort of sad to see chapter 4, obviously bringing a close to Keanu Reeves's like John Wick, but I think it was absolutely necessary to do it because I just don't know how many more of these they could potentially do without it just getting a little bit too much like Fast and the Furious and a little bit ridiculous and overplayed. I think them kind of knowing when to call it quits is a great thing. The only downside to this movie, and it's not even really a downside to the film in general, but the only thing that I kind of felt was a little bit just like disappointing is just the timing of everything. That this film is obviously the last time that we get to see Lance Reddick in the movie or in any of the John Wick franchises or in anything. He did pass away kind of while they were on the press tour, I believe, of John Wick 4. So that is incredibly sad. I do love that they did dedicate the film to him, and it was lovely to kind of see that, but it was very bittersweet, I think, to watch his role in the film kind of come to an end, knowing that he had passed away pretty much right around the time that the movie was coming out. And that is just, I don't know, it's incredibly heartbreaking for me. I think that it is incredibly heartbreaking for a lot of people because Lance Reddick has obviously been in a lot of things that people love and enjoy, and he has just been such kind of a down-to-earth person. I know there was like a memorial I think that they were doing on Destiny because he has a character on there, and they sort of stood vigil, like just Destiny players had stood vigil kind of around his character in that video game. And for me, of course, I absolutely loved his character as Silence in Horizon Zero Dawn. He was one of my favorites in that franchise. I very much love Horizon Zero Dawn, and I don't know if I can imagine not seeing him, come back in anything else. It's just such a shame to see someone of his caliber pass away and not get to experience him in anything from this point on. It reminds me a bit of like Robin Williams, where you just kind of look at it and you're just incredibly sad that you don't ever get to see him share his talent anymore. But like I said, that I think that's the only like downside, and it's not even really a downside. It's just sort of a sad moment in the film itself. So very bittersweet, but I very much enjoyed it. I think it is absolutely worth a watch. I don't know. I don't know that there are too many people that won't go see chapter 4 for John Wick, but I don't know. For me, at least, if they do, I do want to see Ballerina, but I think if they do any spin-off series like with Mr. Nobody, like I think that they might. I'm not sure that I'm interested in that. I think if Rena came back and continued her character role as Akira in a spin-off series, I would absolutely be down for that. I think she's incredible. I definitely want to see her do like more action films. Of course, if she wants to, but I would love to see her do more action films. I almost think that she almost took the cake, I mean, obviously Keanu is amazing, but as far as the other characters, I don't know, she pulled out in front for me. I very much enjoyed getting to watch her like do her thing. So, but those are my thoughts on John Wick chapter 4. I would love to know what you guys thought. Subscribe if you would like to join the movie nerd family. You can find me on Instagram at Cinematic Sarcastic Podcast, and I hope to see you in the next episode.